From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is U.S. Farm Report.
Welcome to U.S. Farm Report this weekend, and it's another U.S. Farm Report Beck's College Roadshow, this time from a university that was founded 7 years before where it's housed actually became a state. A university that boasts one of the largest urban campuses in the U.S., stretching along both sides of the Mississippi River, and a university that produced one of agriculture's giants, Mr. Norman Borlaug. We're at the University of Minnesota over the next 60 minutes. More tense words from the Trump administration toward China this week.
Well, I think it's fair to say we're upping the ante here in both directions.
With fresh threats, could the Chinese market be gone for good? The impact it's having on farmers in the upper Midwest and Plains this year. With changing demand, what if you could breed soybeans that boast higher oil content for farmers to cash in?
We'd like to increase the oil content in the soybean up from like 22% up to maybe closer to 30%.
The work being done here at the University of Minnesota. One of the oldest football rivalries in the U.S. happens to call Minnesota home. The story behind that game. And La Niña watch is now in effect. We'll tell you what it means.
The 2025 U.S. Farm Report College Roadshow from the University of Minnesota is brought to you exclusively by Beck's. From farmers' first pass in the field to the final one at harvest, it's a game plan rooted in faith and belief. Beck's Hybrids is with you every turn because both on and off the field, we're all farmers at heart. See why at beckshybrids.com.
And now for the news. While farmers continue to harvest big crops, space for where to store them is at a premium. The soybean harvest has nearly wrapped up in the northwestern corn belt, and with strong yields in China absent from the export market, piles are a common sight at elevators. Without China, some elevators aren't bidding on soybeans, and those that are have lowered their bids.
There's a lot of elevators out there that won't be accepting soybeans. If they do, they're going to be pricing in that risk of not having an export market, specifically China, by pricing it in through the wider basis.
In fact, soybean basis levels are as bad or worse than during the 2018 trade war, as seen in this map, especially in the Northwest Corn Belt, which exports up to 80% of its beans. With the government shutdown, key reports used to gauge how harvest is going are on hold. That's why Farm Journal and our partners at ProFarmer conducted our own survey about harvest yields and other important topics on producers' minds right now. About 1,200 farmers from across the country responded, but we focused mostly on the 7 crop tour states. ProFarmer economist Lane Akery crunched the numbers. The survey shows roughly 79% of the soybean crop has been harvested. The analyst survey this week put progress at 60%. Corn harvest is nearing the halfway point at 43% complete. In terms of yields, Akery pooling expectations compared to last year and plugging it into ProFarmer spreadsheets, estimating a national corn yield average of 178.5 bushels to the acre. That would be lower than last year's estimate of 179.3.
Illinois saw the sharpest decline by far, nearly 7% drop from last year. And, last year was a record Illinois corn crop. And right behind that was Indiana seeing a 4.6% drop. And then Iowa saw a 3.2% drop. So those weighed pretty heavily. And, even Ohio last year, the corn crop was down pretty hard, but it's been dry for most of the year. And on average, we were down 7% in Ohio.
Survey results found higher yield in Minnesota and South Dakota compared to last year, with Nebraska coming in about even. You can read more about this at agweb.com. We continue to follow the latest developments in the trade negotiations between the U.S. and China, and it continues to change. China on Monday calling for the U.S. to withdraw a new threat of high tariffs and other export control measures. The statement from Beijing came after President Trump announced the possible new tariff last week. That's after China placed stricter restrictions on rare earths, a vital resource used in electronics. While the president did not withdraw his tariff threat over the weekend, on his Truth Social site, he posted, quote, "Don't worry about China, it will be fine. Highly respected President Xi just had a bad moment. He doesn't want depression for his country, and neither do I," end quote. And President Trump had something to say this week about China's lack of U.S. soybean buying, posting on his Truth Social site, quote, "I believe that China purposely is not buying our soybeans and causing difficulty for our soybean farmers is an economically hostile act. We are considering terminating business with China having to do with cooking oil and other elements of trade as retribution," end quote. President Trump also talking about soybeans during a bilateral lunch with the president of Argentina.
Yeah, is China trying to draw a wedge between the U.S. and Argentina by buying soybeans from Argentina and not U.S. farmers?
I would say so. Yeah.
And China on
China likes to draw wedges.
Ships too.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess that's natural. It's China, and it's natural, but it's not gonna mean anything in the end.
The U.S. was China's top market for used cooking oil last year, but after China cut tax rebates late last year and the U.S. imposed tariffs on Chinese goods this year, imports plunged by 65%. President Trump also talking to the media this week from the White House about prices at the grocery store, saying that his administration was working to lower the price of beef in the country.
We are working on beef, and I think we have a deal on beef that's going to bring the price of beef. That would be the one product that we would say is a little bit higher than we want it, maybe higher than we want it, and that's going to be coming down pretty soon too. We did something, we worked our magic.
The president did not elaborate about the deal. Beef prices have climbed to record highs after cattle ranchers were forced to cut herds due to years-long drought in the western U.S. That dried up lands used for grazing and raised feeding costs. A La Niña watch is officially in effect, and meteorologists say this could be one to keep a close eye on. Eric Snodgrass, a principal atmospheric scientist at Nutrien, tells me this winter is shaping up to be cold, snowy in the north and drier across the south. But Snodgrass says the pattern could dramatically improve drought, shrinking possibly the coverage that's currently setting at 73% of the U.S.
Well, I think if I'm a cotton belt farmer, then I got to be worried because typically, historically, La Niñas tend to favor drier conditions across the southern tier of the United States, from the Sun Belt through the Cotton Belt. Whereas in the Midwestern United States, we tend to do okay. We tend to have good snow. We tend to get decent moisture. So does part of the Pacific Northwest, actually all the way to the Northeast as well. So we tend to split the country north versus south. But the big question I have, Tyne, is what does the drought monitor look like by the time we get into April? Right now, it's at 73% coverage in the lower 48. Is this the kind of winter that can knock this thing back to maybe 33% by the time we get into May of next year?
Snodgrass says it really just depends on what flavor of La Niña we see. He says the jet stream is gaining momentum and the next few months will be key for moisture recharge heading into 2026. And while he says no 2 years are exactly the same, he actually thinks this winter is shaping up to be similar to last year. All right, that's it for the news. Well, the U.S. was already losing ground in exports to China, but it seems like that accelerated this year. And if you are trying to keep up with the trade tensions right now, it is nearly impossible. We will take a look at the situation with Chip Flory coming up next.